Frida Kahlo is one of the most famous female painters of the 20th century. With a life both scrutinized and immortalized, her work now attracts blockbuster audiences and sells for millions. Born to an affluent family in revolutionary Mexico, she had the courage to join the people's fight and the bravery to turn personal tragedy into potent art. Today, Frida is an inspiration to people across the world. And though I'm no expert, she's an inspiration to me too. I first came across Frida's art when I was a teenager. There was a real rawness, love, loss, betrayal, pain, suffering. There's so much going on in these paintings through a woman's eyes. 4 years ago, I was an unknown medical student, but Frida's determination to pursue her art against all odds inspired me to pursue my dream of making music. And today, Frida is with me wherever I go. This is my tattoo. I got this done 4 years ago. As an artist, it's the bravery that I wanted a piece of, so I feel like her being on my arm is a constant reminder to not be afraid. Now I'm taking time out from writing my second album to reconnect with Frida on a deeper level. For the first time ever, I'm going to her homeland of Mexico to see the place where she lived and painted. This is where her spirit is left. To meet the people who knew her best and to come face to face with her finest work. She's made this, hoping to enter the mind and spirit. Makes you feel like a boss. Of the woman who is under my skin. Mexico City. I've traveled over 5,000 miles to be here. There's no better place to learn about her than where she was inspired, where she was born, things she would have seen every day. By coming to Mexico, I hope I can really understand Frida. Frida adored Mexico, its culture, its politics, and its people. And Mexico came to adore her too. But 60 years after her death, can her presence still be felt on the streets where she grew up? La Ciudadela is one of Mexico City's most famous craft markets. I love this market. It's all colorful, very alive. And it seems Frida is very much alive here too. She's the star of this market. But can you take this adoration a little too far? Oh, wow. I have a feeling she wouldn't like it. Perhaps her paintings being in a place that's accessible would be cool for her, but she didn't really court this kind of commerce. But I just can't resist picking up my own little piece of Frida. We got money, Frida money. Yeah, it's crazy she's on the money. She is the Queen of Mexico, officially. It seems Frida's face is everywhere. It's no surprise because she made around 70 self-portraits. Not bad for someone who had no intention of becoming a painter. Frida was born in 1907 to an affluent middle-class family. Her dad was a Jewish German immigrant, her mum a Catholic from rural Mexico. The cleverest of 4 sisters, Frida had aspirations to become a doctor. But I want to know how Frida came to make such powerful art that secured her place as one of the leading artists of the 20th century. Over on the other side of town is a hangout for Mexico City's art students. Here at La Bota Cafe, the walls are adorned with yet more of Frida's self-portraits. They're strange pictures. Frida's face tells us very little, but their meaning is in the detail. Can you talk me through some of the symbolism in these pictures?
Well, one of the things that I find also fascinating in Frida's self-portraits is the employment of Christian imagery that she does. She was anti-clerical, she didn't believe in the church at all, but at the same time she used a lot of Christian symbols because I think that she realized that that was something that was very much embedded in Mexican culture. So if you use, for instance, the crown of thorns, people can immediately identify that she's talking about suffering.
Yes. 4 years ago, I got this tattoo of a thorn necklace portrait.
I don't know why you choose it in special, but it's one of my favorites, so
Okay.
I'm delighted to see it, and I think it's also very well done. And you are missing right here the hummingbird that is here.
Yes.
And some people say that it has to do with lack of luck that you can have in love.
Okay. And I took out the monkey and the cat. What do you think they represent in the portrait?
Traditionally in our history, they are identified with a lot of sexual connotations,
Okay.
particularly with lust. Also the black cat in the Christian symbolism has to do with the devil. So
Okay.
somehow she's talking about the way in which she was starting to be perceived.
I love my tattoo, but with Frida making so many self-portraits, some think she may have been a little self-obsessed.
I don't think that was an issue with Frida. I think that she found a way to translate those very personal paintings into something more.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about her life, it's a statement about what life is.
Yes. Through self-portraits, Frida was able to make art that spoke not just to herself. Her work resonates with me and so many others around the world. We're all essentially going through the same thing. That's why even, so many men relate to her art as well as women, and we're human. Frida intended to work herself out, express herself, and I'm starting to see the value in perhaps being more introspective, because the better you know yourself, the more articulate you can be. But why did Frida paint so many self-portraits? And how did her work come to have such resonance for so many people? The answer can be traced back to one catastrophic and life-changing event when Frida was just 18. It was 1925. Frida was on the threshold of adult life. She was studying at the finest school in Mexico, soon to embark on her medical career. But that was to change on one fateful bus journey. She was on her way back from school, and this would have been a familiar journey for her. She would have been looking forward to getting home, seeing her dad, maybe what she was having for dinner, probably lost in her thoughts, I'd imagine. One thing I'm certain of is she would have been completely unaware of how her life was about to change. The bus Frida was traveling in was smashed by a tram here in the heart of Mexico City. It was a gruesome scene that left Frida's body mutilated. She had a broken collarbone, broken ribs, broken spine, and her pelvis was pierced by the handrail. It entered through her side and came out of her pelvis through the vagina. So Frida's body was in quite a mess by the end of this crash. Doctors were unsure if Frida would live. She spent a month in hospital encased in a plaster cast. Her spine was permanently damaged and she'd be in pain for the rest of her days. But this crossroads in the heart of Mexico City would prove to be a crossroads in Frida's life. Out in the suburbs of Mexico City lies the Blue House, her childhood home. This was the place Frida came to recuperate after the bus crash. There's a strange feeling of feeling like I've been here already or feeling like I've returned somewhere. Today it's a shrine, home to her easel, her paint box, and the many trinkets that made this place her home. I love that they've left everything in place and, you feel that Frida has just up and left the room. Maybe he's coming back to finish off a piece of art. Yeah, this is a very special room. But after the crash, this place was less a home, more a prison. During the long process of recovery, Frida was pretty much confined to bed. To help pass the time, a mirror was installed above her bed. She was given a palette and encouraged to paint. In this bed, Frida became an artist. Where an artist creates, that's where the energy is left. I think this is where her spirit is left. And the fact that she slept right here, I can feel the energy. And I think it still holds magic somewhere, somehow. Often alone and barely able to move, Frida turned to the subject she knew the best: herself. This would be the first of Frida's many self-portraits. It was a tentative start. I think this is a pretty piece of work. It's nice to look at, but it doesn't move me emotionally. It doesn't really give me much insight into this woman. It lacks the rawness and the honesty that is to come in later years. Though born out of so much pain, it seems Frida wasn't yet ready to express it on the canvas. Even so, I think the painting is deeply symbolic. For me, this picture is really a symbol of her determination. I think most people under such circumstances would close themselves off from the world and become wrapped up in perhaps bitterness or sadness, despair, but she still wanted to create and communicate with the world and tell the world who she was. But more than this, Frida's first portrait is a reminder to me to embrace my own art and use it as a form of therapy. Music has always allowed me to release a lot of stress, worry, thoughts. From the very first portrait we saw, I get the sense that it is true of Frida as well. She needed to try and perhaps free herself of this sadness or these struggles. So, I'd imagine painting really gave her that release. An horrific accident had led Frida to make her first self-portrait. But her work would only take on true emotional power after a man had broken her heart. Here in the Blue House, Frida spent around 2 years recuperating after the bus crash. But she was no stranger to sickness or confinement. When Frida was 6 years old, she contracted polio, and that left her with a withered right leg. So it confined her to La Casa Azul for about 8 months. Frida would go to her window, breathe on the window and draw a doorway. And through the doorway, she entered an imaginary world and could escape her situation. As a young girl, Frida had used her imagination to escape. During her recovery from the bus crash, she used painting. Her portraits are accomplished, but they were just the beginning of her journey to artistic greatness. For now, Frida's greatest achievement was to leave her sickbed and rejoin the world. In Frida's day, the Salantanampa is where the young generation came to drink, dance, and put the world to rights.
It's really cool. It's like full of energy and a place you want to get drunk in, I think. Yeah. I would have come here. It's nice and loud. Like it's party music.
After the Mexican Revolution of 1910, places like this were a hotbed of politics. The country had been gripped by fighting and corruption, and the youth of Mexico were campaigning for a better future. Freed from the confines of the Blue House, Frida joined the fight.
She's loved by the people, and this is the spirit of Mexico, so she embodies that.
In Frida's eyes, the only way to secure a better future was through the politics of communism.
How did Frida get into her politics?
Frida rompe con su origen económico y adquiere el origen al que le llama su corazón, que tiene que ver con el amor al pueblo. Imagínate un ser humano criado entre tules, decimos aquí en México, que no solamente conoce esa realidad, sino que se mete en esa realidad. Y si en este momento, aquí en el Tenampa, estuviera Frida y estaría levantando su cerveza y gritando, ¡Viva México! ¡Viva el partido! ¡Viva la revolución!
Frida never lost her passion for politics. In this later work, she is embraced by one of the great minds behind communism, Karl Marx. But it was in the political ferment of the late 1920s that Frida met the man who would change her life forever. His name was Diego Rivera. Rivera was seen as the greatest Mexican artist of his time, known for painting huge public murals. He was twice married, twice her age, and definitely no looker. So what did Frida see in him? Here in Mexico City, few know better than Rina Lazo.
Right. Now I want you to sit in Frida's chair.
Oh, wow.
And I sit in Diego's chair.
Wow.
As a young woman, she was Diego's assistant and intimate friend.
What kind of man was Diego?
Well, he always was admired by women because women feel that he encouraged them to be someone.
Right. Were you attracted to Diego?
Well, I think yes.
Yes.
But his attraction was his wisdom. He could talk to you about everything. Oh, wow. And that made you feel like, well, you are in love with him because you are in love with his wisdom. It was wonderful to work with him. I think he was a teacher and like a guide for your life.
Yes. Meeting somebody that had worked so closely with Diego really brought this whole experience to life. Rina really spoke of his passion, his wisdom, and his real belief in women, and his understanding of beauty on a level that perhaps other people don't understand. So, yeah, I think I like Diego.
And obviously, Frida felt the same. They dated for just a year, and in 1929, they were married. To celebrate their love, Frida later made a painting. And it's one that reveals a lot about how she saw her role in the marriage.
Diego is a big man, but she's painted herself very small in comparison. You know, it's very clear that he is the painter, he is the artist, and she is the wife. I have this impression of Frida as a outspoken feminist, ballsy woman. So to see her like this shows a very sensitive, intimate side of her. And, you know, I think it's beautiful to see. I don't think many people would have seen this side of her in real life. So to see it displayed here in a painting and her wanting to express that to the world, I think it's quite brave of her, really.
Though Frida cast herself as the wife, Diego could see her potential as a painter. And he'd exert a powerful influence over her life and work. Diego was fascinated by Mexico's cultural heritage. Under his influence, Frida began to look back and interrogate her own roots. At the Blue House is a painting which explains how Frida's roots were different to most.
This is the painting of Frida, named My Family. And here we have her parents, her mother and her father. Her father was German, and then the mother was Mexican from Oaxaca.
So in this time period, how unusual was it to have a mix of cultures within one family?
It was not really common, but this mix was so important because Frida is not a normal people at that period. Frida is really so avant-garde for her period, and she was not normal.
Frida grew up more influenced by her European father rather than the traditional Mexican roots of her mother. Growing up in Scotland with a Zambian dad and an English mum, I know just how the young Frida must have felt.
I just remember a real longing when I was younger for this other world, which was half of me, but I knew nothing of. You know, there was no connection with Africa in Scotland, so you long for it, and I think that's what I found in music.
And I think Frida found the same in art. She began making paintings that showed her affinity with her Mexican roots. They culminated with two staggering paintings. Here, Frida is suckling at the breast of an Indian nurse. And here she's depicted among some great icons of Mexico, symbolizing betrayal, death, and fertility. But painting wasn't the only way that Frida reclaimed her Mexican roots.
I'm going to show you something very interesting.
Okay. Cibles Henestrosa owns an unrivaled collection of traditional Mexican dresses, of the type Frida is now famous for.
That's the way we keep the dresses from my little town.
Her collection is amongst her most valuable heirlooms.
And this is a skirt that we use every day.
Yep.
It's called Rabona.
Rabona.
And this is called huipil. It's a blouse. These fabrics are made in England.
Okay.
I'm going to show you this huipil that is in the paint.
Right. Oh, wow. And who's the woman in the painting?
It's my mother.
It's beautiful.
It's the same one.
Yeah.
But there's one dress here that had a very special owner.
My mother gave Frida this dress.
This was Frida's dress.
Frida's dress.
Wow.
Would you like to try it?
Yep.
Today, Frida's dresses are priceless artifacts. Who could resist trying one on?
Can I try this?
And maybe a few accessories too.
Yes. Because we have the short hair, we use this.
Oh.
We put this like that.
Okay.
Everything.
All right.
Do you want this one or another one? There are many
Ooh, I'll try
kinds.
this one.
Try with you. Watch.
Okay.
Here.
All right. Be back tonight, Matthew. I'll be Frida.
Oh, you look beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I love it.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you want to try jewelry?
Yes, please.
This one is called ahogador.
It feels quite spiritual, you know, to be in the same dress as Frida Kahlo. I feel like a different person in a dress. Yeah, it feels powerful. It's amazing, though. Makes you feel like a boss.
Frida's dresses allowed her to project the pride and passion she had in her Mexican roots.
Wearing Frida's dress, I didn't think that would ever happen. And just being alone, putting it on, just felt like such a significant experience in my life, you know. And you feel transformed, you know. I felt like a different person.
I'm sure Frida felt like a different person too. But I know of an obscure sketch that tells another story. It shows that beneath the dress, there remained a broken and fragile body.
I don't think she did really want people to know how vulnerable she was. And I think with the effects of polio on her right leg, spinal column, she's broken underneath it all, but this is giving her strength. I'm sure it helped to wear something that gave her more power.
But Frida's insecurities ran deeper than the physical scars that remained from childhood. Hidden away in a corner of the Blue House is a cabinet of curiosities that betray Frida's most heartfelt desires.
These are miniature pieces of furniture and trinkets that were for her doll's house, and she'd been collecting them since she was a child. Over the years, just building this massive collection. First things that stand out to me are the musical instruments. So she's got grand piano, maybe a baby grand. Oh, she's got another piano over there. Wonder how musical she was. Yeah, I'd like a few of these things enlarged to real life size.
To me, these are not mute objects. They speak ever so quietly of Frida's deep longing to become a mother.
There's a baby wrapped up. There's a smaller baby on the bed. You know, the fact she had this collection from when she was a child and continued to build it. She was creating this world, which does reflect her curiosity of motherhood.
But Frida would never fulfill her dream of motherhood. Across her life, Frida suffered at least 3 devastating miscarriages. The most harrowing of these happened in 1932 during a trip to America. This remarkable footage was taken in Detroit. It shows Diego hard at work on a new mural while Frida watches on. Under the glare of the lens, she does her best to hide the inner anguish of a recent miscarriage. But what happened in Detroit would inspire one of Frida's most dramatic paintings.
You can see here in the background, there's an industrial background of Detroit. Here, just kind of barren land. You have the bed, and then you have all these arteries linking to these different aspects of things that she's lost. You have the fetus, the lumbar spine, the pelvis. What strikes me about this picture is it's a real departure from what we've seen so far from her work. You know, the rawness and the honesty which she becomes renowned for is really marked in this painting. I think this is the beginning of something that is very raw, very dark.
In fact, Frida was being encouraged by Diego to look back at a curious tradition in Mexican painting. Today, the tradition is all but dead, but I've heard of an artist who's keeping it alive, in a place they call the Corner of Miracles. Alfredo Vichilis is a retablo painter. He's commissioned to make work by people who have suffered a misfortune or a narrow escape from death.
Can you tell me more about retablo painting?
Porque el retablo, yo lo llamo así, pequeña película, con principio y fin.
Sí.
Porque si te das cuenta, la escenografía te da el momento, pero el texto te da la historia.
Why do you think that Frida turned to retablo for inspiration?
Porque a lo mejor por la vida que llevaba, ¿no? Tantas enfermedades y esa vida tan dolorosa que llevó ella, creo que en el retablo encontró la manera de expresar un agradecimiento a la vida. Y mira que creo que siento, si ella aquí se queja de su aborto, demostrando que el arte no se mide por tamaños, sino es el sentimiento de la obra que conquistó la mirada y la conciencia universalmente, siendo la pintora más famosa hasta la actualidad.
Sí.
Retablos gave Frida's work a new and gruesome dimension, where human pain and suffering were laid bare. She painted the bloody scene of her own birth, the suicide of a showbiz starlet. But Frida's most potent retablo would come when the man she loved the most committed the ultimate act of betrayal. Around 1934, Diego began an affair with Frida's sister, Cristina. Though he'd had affairs before, this relationship was a devastating blow. It broke Frida's heart.
In one of her writings, Frida summed up how she was feeling in 3 words, which were murder by life.
When Frida felt able to take up the brush, she made a brutal retablo. In it, she drew on the pain of others to portray the pain of Diego's treachery.
Frida had read about a famous murder, and she was using this to symbolize how the affair had affected her. So above here, there's the banner saying, "A few small nips." And this is what the murderer was quoted to have said in court. And it suggests a lack of remorse and a lack of understanding as to what he had done and the pain he'd caused, really. So I think it's a very clever way of expressing how she felt after the affair.
But across her life, Frida had affairs of her own. Celebrity photographer Nicholas Murray, modernist sculptor Isamu Noguchi, and she's even rumored to have had a fling with cabaret sensation Josephine Baker. But in 1937, she would embark on one affair that would have unforeseen consequences for her life and art. This is the home of Leon Trotsky. As a devotee of communism, he'd helped lead the Russian Revolution of 1917. But political differences had sent him into exile, and in 1937 he'd washed up here in Mexico City. Trotsky was idolized by Diego, and Frida must have been equally enthralled.
Frida's ideal man was someone of great intelligence. I think that excited her, someone that was determined and capable of saving the world in some way. A brave, intelligent man was probably her Achilles heel, I think.
It wasn't long before this meeting of minds became a passionate affair.
Frida was a very disinhibited person, and she used to seduce most of men who was around her. And at that time, even Frida confessed that Diego did not know of this little affair that were between Frida and Trotsky.
Right.
After the affair, Frida dedicated a painting to her ex-lover.
I think knowing how important her art was to her, for her to dedicate a picture to Trotsky was, says a lot. This is her most precious gift, and to give it to a man says quite a lot. I think a man that's not her husband.
For a painter who's famed for pain and suffering, it's rare to see Frida depict herself in such flirtatious mood.
She's holding a bouquet of flowers. There's flowers in her hair, a brooch. I mean, it's just very delicate. Yeah, this is Frida sending some late-night text.
But maybe there's more to this affair than painting and passion.
Perhaps it was revenge. And this is a man that is Diego's idol. So how better to achieve revenge? The love of your life, sleeping with your sister, is going to scar you very deeply.
When Diego found out about the affair, he was furious. It's rumored that's why he filed for divorce in 1939. Now in her early 30s and after a decade of marriage, Frida walked alone. It was a time of deep emotional pain, but it was now that Frida set to work on a new painting of lost love and loneliness. It was to be her first great masterpiece.
You do feel quite starstruck. It's right here in front of me. I'm just seeing more detail than I've seen before in it. The muscle tissue, she's painted a different color. All the chambers are there. She's painted what is really underneath.
The two Fridas was painted as the divorce papers came through. If you look at the hearts, the Frida on the right is the one Diego had loved. The Frida on the left is the one he no longer loves. And to me, this painting represents the moment that Frida's art reached a new psychological depth.
When you really deeply love someone, they become you, you become them. So when that falls apart, you have to reconnect with yourself again. She has to be her own companion. She has to be her own lifeline again. I think she's completely alone here with herself. Yeah, I felt that.
Seeing the two Fridas painting and tracing the path that Frida took to get there has made me understand what it takes to make serious art.
As an artist, I think you're always trying to tap into your deepest emotions. In the two Fridas painting, I think that Frida was trying to reveal a deeper truth to us, and that's how you create something that's great. The braver you can be, the closer to the truth you'll get, and the greater your art.
But just as Frida was gaining a reputation as a great artist, she would be betrayed again. Not by a man, but by her own body. Despite the wrench of divorce, Frida's separation from Diego lasted just a year. Their lives too entangled, too dependent. But the split was a catalyst.
Up until then, it had been Diego telling everyone, this is an amazing artist, one day you'll see. I don't know how confident she was about her art, but I'm sure someone bigging you up and and claiming you almost, I'm sure she would have felt quite flattered and quite like, oh, I belong, perhaps I belong somewhere now.
I want to trace Frida's footsteps out of the artistic wilderness and into the limelight as the great painter I've come to know. It's a story that begins back in 1938 when Frida was discovered by the Surrealists and their leader, André Breton.
How did Frida come into contact with the Surrealists?
The Surrealists had pronounced interest in Mexico in general, and Breton wrote that in the work of Frida, you could see elements that were close or similar to Surrealism.
Okay.
And somehow that the work of Frida expressed this Surrealist sensibility.
The Surrealists were fascinated by the subconscious mind and their dreams, painting worlds that were beyond reality. And in Frida, they claimed a Mexican surrealist who painted herself in strange landscapes and who painted the inner workings of her mind.
How did Frida's link to Surrealism affect her career?
I think Surrealism functioned as a platform of exposure of her work during the 30s and 40s.
Though she never saw herself as a surrealist, her connection with them brought Frida to the big time. 1938 saw her first solo exhibition.
New York is not only steel and stone, it is people too, a strange cosmopolitan paradox.
Held in New York City, it virtually sold out. The following year, she became the first modern Mexican painter to be bought by the Louvre in Paris. And Picasso was so impressed, he gave her a handy set of earrings. When she made it into the pages of Vogue, Frida had found recognition as an independent woman and artist. I know what it must have felt like for Frida. It's a journey I've been on myself.
The way I was discovered and the way I got into the industry was through a producer, Naughty Boy. So I kind of see him as like the equivalent of Diego, because during those 2-3 years, I was in his shadow. And then there came a point where we had to kind of split up, and I had to go and promote my album and be Emeli Sandé. So I definitely understand how she feels, how she would have felt at that moment.
But no sooner had the world opened up for Frida than she was forced to retreat. In 1944, the physical pain that Frida had battled with since childhood became more acute. Surgeons performed numerous operations and spinal taps, and Frida was forced to wear a restrictive corset. But it was now that Frida made what I think is her most powerful and heart-rending painting of pain and frustration.
Her body is failing her now. It's a betrayal of her body. So, it's real sadness, it's pain, she's broken, she's desperately trying to bind it back together and find a way to still stand, but it's her disintegration. So, yeah, there's a real pain and hurt. Maybe it's become overwhelming at this point, because there is no attempt to cover it. So, yeah, I think we're seeing a vulnerable woman now, and she's allowing us to see that.
As Frida's health deteriorated further, her friends rallied around. In 1953, they organized an exhibition of her work. It was to be her first and only solo exhibition in her beloved Mexico. It was less a celebration, more a farewell.
Se repartió pensando que iban a llegar muchos gentes, pero llegaron muchos cientos de gentes.
Arturo Bustos was a close friend of Frida and witnessed her bravery on the night.
Sorpresivamente, el doctor había dicho que no iba a llegar y a la mera hora ya llegó en la ambulancia. Llegó la ambulancia con su sirena anunciando que ya llegaba. Entonces la sacaron en una camilla. Pues yo creo que era un ser encantador, un genio del arte que logró expresar el dolor humano. Eso ha hecho tan grandísima artista.
In 1954, just a year after her exhibition, Frida was struck down with pneumonia. She passed away. She was 47 years old. Today, Frida's work sells for millions and is revered across the globe. But hers is a legacy that goes far beyond painting. As a feminist icon, she has an army of devoted fans, including myself. And in the minds of those who knew her, Frida's spirit will always live on. I think by going to Mexico, I found a human Frida. Frida was trying to reveal a deeper truth to us, and perhaps examine herself. And at the same time, I think her art speaks universally. But it's Frida's commitment to giving us the truth of her feelings that's so inspiring to me. I'm gonna say everything, and I really don't care what people are gonna think of me. It's just how I need to express myself. Whether they think it's awful or not, it's still the truth. And I think, there's beauty in the truth and there's greatness in the truth. And I think that's how you create something that's great.